Hey everybody, it is Friday and it is the end of March and it is time for Midas Letter RAW, and I'm here as usual with my good friend Special Head Milewski.
How you doing, James?
I'm doing well, Ed.
Nice to see you.
You too.
You look good. And by the way, I must say, the haircut, pretty good haircut.
Yours too.
Well, that was a bit of a buzzer.
We didn't cut each other's hair.
No.
Just so they know. Anyways, we got a pretty interesting show today. We're going to have Charles Turk here. He's the CEO of Faircourt Asset Management and the 9 Point Alternative Health Fund. He's going to talk to us about the performance of his portfolio in the cannabis space and some of his top cannabis picks. Then we're going to be joined by Jim DeMesa. He's the CEO of Emerald Health Pharmaceuticals. Not to be confused with Emerald Health Therapeutics or Emerald Health, a myriad of other iterations of Emerald Health. All part of a conglomerate, very interesting group, number of companies publicly traded, but this company is privately held and is in the midst of a Regulation A+ offering in the United States only, which is closing on Sunday night. So you've got 24 hours to make up your mind. We have no interest in this company and we are not paid by that company. So we're just telling you this as a public service announcement in case you want to get involved. $6 a share. What do you think of that, Ed?
Well, I mean,
we'll see what they do.
I guess there's so many people now involved in markets that there's no amount that won't be taken. Like if you want to throw in I got $60 here, bring it in.
Well, the Regulation A space is particularly interesting because it's the framework administered under the guise of the SEC, where you're exempt from the rules of the 1933 and 34 Securities Act in terms of reporting.
Right.
And it allows you, as an issuer, private or public, to solicit investment from non-accredited investors up to a maximum of 10% of their net worth or yearly income using advertising, including social media.
It's pretty broad.
Well, it's like taking a bucket of minnows and dumping it into the Shark Tank, if you ask me. I'm curious as to how they arrived at those metrics. 10%.
I don't know.
I don't know. Okay, we'll let anybody lose 10% of their annual income in a fishy, I'm not saying that Reg A's are fishy, but a non-public, meaning non-reporting entity raising money.
They can raise it for anything.
Well,
maybe the government thinks that if the general population loses some of their money, they become more attentive. They pay more attention, follow the rules better, less bravado.
Right. It's along the lines of prohibition. We take away your alcohol, you start to, a bit of more moral compass.
Yeah.
Speaking of moral, the government of Canada, Tony Gravel, in the speech last week, disclosed that the government of Canada was reducing, or had already reduced, its balance sheet in terms of Canadian Treasury bills held on the balance sheet from $575 billion to $475 billion because of a concern about moral hazard.
Yeah. So let me get this right. So the Americans are still expanding their balance sheet.
At this point, they're expanding at the rate of at least $2 trillion every 12-month period. This year, that number's going up to $5 trillion, including the fiscal stimulus.
Yeah. And Canada is pulling in their horns a bit because they see something out there that maybe is a little scary.
Well, moral hazard. So I saw that moral hazard, and I've got to give credit where credit's due. Wolf Richter at wolfstreet.com was the one who wrote this article. Wolf lives in San Francisco, and he's a regular commenter on all things in the American sector, but he has lots of guest writers.
Right.
But I was surprised to see that he's so dialed into the Canadian
context. He's paying
context.
attention.
Yeah, because no Canadian media covered this. It was not a thing in Canada. I'm subscribed to Wolf's newsletter because he's got a real unique perspective and an original voice. Anyways, it got me thinking about moral hazard. And so I went and looked up the speech on the Government of Canada website. This is Wolf's article here.
Yeah.
And his website, wolfstreet.com. Go check it out if you haven't. But Wolf's a great guy. He doesn't take money from anybody as far as I can tell, and he just tells it like it is. But he says the Bank of Canada announced the balance sheet reduction, suddenly worried about moral hazard. So he says that in a sort of facetious tone. So I went and looked at the stress, or rather the moral hazard speech that was given. This was dated March 23rd. Tony Gravel is the deputy governor. He's a member of the CFA Society of Toronto, and he essentially delivered this speech in which I guess he delivered it to the CFA Board of Toronto.
The CFA is the Charter of Financial Analysts.
Right.
So these are all supposedly financial wizards.
Wizards. Like, poof, we're an asset.
Yeah.
Now you're a liability.
Yeah.
On my balance sheet. Okay, so anyways, he makes this reference to Walter Bagehot, who was the founder of The Economist, a British journalist of rather broad repute.
Right.
And he says, moral hazard emerges whenever market participants or other economic actors feel that they can engage in risky behavior without bearing consequences if things go wrong. So the Bank of Canada is essentially, the deputy governor of the Bank of Canada is saying that it is the mandate, among other things, of the Bank of Canada to guard us against moral hazard, because when they say market participants, that's you, that's me.
Yes.
Other economic actors, that's pretty much everybody. Everybody is an economic actor of one way, one stripe or another. But the central bank is going to take it upon themselves to guard us from feeling that we can indulge in risky behavior without consequences. The central bank, as the lender of last resort, is free to engage in such moral hazard. We are not.
Is this now? Tell me how does the Bitcoin thing? Is there any tie-in here? Are they what is central banks? What are the regulators? What are they all going to do about the Bitcoin's now bigger than Tesla? It's such a big thing that if something went wrong, what would it do to everything else? There's so much money involved here. If the dominoes started to fall, maybe that's the government's first salvo.
Well, so my question, and I actually reached out.
So things are a little tighter when they're pulling in their horns. Things are a little tighter. That means if I reach into my pocket, there may not be that $5.
Well, are they tighter?
I don't know.
Or are they just, because why isn't the U.S. concerned about moral hazard? Their rate of debasement, which is what we're talking about here, currency debasement, is at a rate 10 times greater than ours. And they have zero concern with moral hazard.
Well, they do have the currency, the standard in what do you call it? The reserve currency. The world's reserve currency is the American dollar.
Really?
So maybe they can get away with things.
So they think they can get away with things, exactly, which is what they're talking about.
Moral
People
hazard.
thinking they can get away with things. So basically,
I don't want to get a call from Powell tonight.
I don't think you'd get a call, Ed. I think you'd feel a sharp entry point on the back of your neck and an exit wound on the front of your neck.
Yeah.
If we had an audience. Fortunately, we're nobodies who know nothing, nobody listens to us, so we're in the clear here. We're free to speculate. Probably we're full of crap. Probably we don't know what we're talking about, but this is on the Bank of Canada website, and we did invite Wolf Richter to join us today for a quick discussion. He might not be here today, but we are going to have him at some point next week. Let's talk cannabis for a second. We'll weigh in on these weighty matters a little bit more conclusively after we talk to Charles Turk, who joins us now from 9 Point Alternative Health Fund at Faircourt Asset Management. That is a mouthful. Hi there, my wonderful Midas Letter subscribers. Guess who's back? It's Charles Turk from Faircourt Asset Management, 9 Point Alternative Health Fund. Charles, it's been a long time since we've chatted, and obviously you have not slowed down in any way, shape, or form from investing activity in the cannabis sector. Your top 10 holdings currently: Cresco Labs, Curaleaf, Green Thumb Industries, GW Pharma, Jameson Wellness, Johnson & Johnson, Terra Ascend, Trulieve, United Health, and Village Farms International. Almost uniformly U.S. MSO oriented. Why is that?
Oh, well, we need a day and a half, but let me give you a few reasons. Last year, it's funny that we're on in March, because if we go back to March 20 versus 21, this was the worst, the very beginning of the lockdown. And in the beginning, the first thing that happened was US cannabis became an essential service in 29 states. That was huge, because what it did was it reinvigorated the cannabis industry, and it awakened people to the demand. And what we've really seen is inelastic demand, very similar to alcohol and tobacco. Then you got the first stimulus checks in April. And on April 15th last year, the largest single day of sales across the US in cannabis sales. As the lockdown ended in June, you then started to see this demand month over month just continue to grow. We took that early opportunity as the lockdowns ended in beginning of June in the US, and we reallocated our portfolio. We were being very defensive, alternating into our healthcare side during the pandemic. We started moving into the US names in a bigger way. We always liked the US names, but their valuations were screaming buys. And so you see inelastic demand, month over month growth, and the state by state growth that we started to see on the horizon finally came to fruition. You had November, the ballot initiatives, where we had 5 states that legalized. Some of them were even Republican, traditionally red states. That was huge. I mean, the biggest one is obviously New Jersey, because what we see going forward, and the reason we're still overweight US, is with New Jersey, is the domino effect. All the neighboring states around New Jersey are going to be forced to go adult use recreational. And already we're seeing that. Maryland, New York is on the verge, and you're going to see Pennsylvania and Ohio and Connecticut, Rhode Island, everything around the Northeast. And so this is going to be a significant flip over the next 12 to 24 months with a significant amount of the US population. So after 2020, when you had significant growth, you had significant growth in other growth areas too. And it's very interesting, because I compare US cannabis to other growth sectors like tech, the work from home stocks. I like how you asked me one question and I'm talking forever, but the work from home stocks did phenomenally well last year. But in 2021, the economy is reopening. We're not staying at home as much. We're not going to be tethered to our desks at home. So we see growth in the work from home and tech stock kind of leveling off. But the total addressable market in the United States continues to grow. And so that's why we are continuing to be overweight US cannabis. Plus, the valuations are screaming relative to other growth areas like tech. They're trading at a fraction of the valuation. Long-winded, but that's my thesis.
Yeah, no, that's rather consistent with my observations, and in fact, it's heartwarming to see that somebody else is following the metrics that matter. In your opinion, is it very severely detrimental to the future of cannabis profitability among U.S. MSOs that the Biden administration has kind of exhibited a somewhat hypocritical approach to cannabis legislation, in that the campaign was very clear about its support of decriminalization, if not national regulation of cannabis. But then now Biden has just fired 5 White House staffers for past cannabis use, demonstrating a real conflict of position there. And in my observation, the U.S. MSOs sold off alongside that. Mind you, it was coincident with a broader market sell-off in the last couple of weeks anyway, so really hard to discern there. To what extent do you think that is going to put a pause on the growth in the appeal of valuations of U.S. MSOs going forward?
Yeah, it might have some effect, because it's grabbing headlines. But for us, since last June, and this continues, the thesis is that at the state level, the state by state growth is more meaningful than what's going to happen at the federal level. We don't know when Washington is going to make a decision one way or the other, whether it's the SAFE Act, which is just banking, or whether it's the States Act or the MORE Act or whatever. But what we do know is the demand at the state level continues to grow. And what I mean by the demand is that governors are looking at neighboring states, and the governors that are digging themselves out of a negative economic hole from lockdowns are asking, what's the fastest way that we can recoup tax revenues and jobs? And so regardless of what happens at the federal level, this is going to continue. And so fundamentally, these companies are strong. I think if anything, Biden's administration was never openly supportive of cannabis. The Democrats generally have been supportive, but he's been very vague, wishy-washy, if you will, on how he's going to support it. Kamala Harris, different story. She was the sponsor of the MORE Act in the Senate. But Biden may have a different view, and that may moderate over time. But I think the big issue is state-by-state growth. And if anything, rather than suggesting that it's detrimental, I think that it's actually supportive for the MSOs, because the longer the federal government in the US does nothing, the incumbent players continue to build a moat around their business. So Canadians will not get into the US market. Other countries' cannabis companies don't get into the US market. The traditional alcohol, tobacco, pharmaceutical companies stay away. So it will allow the incumbents to continue to grow. And again, it's why we stay firmly invested.
That's well said. Well stated. Well said. So okay, in that context, then, among your top 10 holdings, which company do you view as being the best positioned to benefit from a lack of federal regulation amidst growing state demand?
Well, there's a lot of issues, but I will give you a name that sticks out more than ever. I'll give you a few. Well, number one, we think Green Thumb Industries, phenomenal execution, continue to grow their state by state footprint, both on the wholesale as well as retail side. Then you've got Trulieve in Florida that has just mastered and continued to grow out of Florida, and they're now in Pennsylvania and Connecticut, as well as some other states that they're getting into. So they're going to continue to grow. They've got terrific gross margin and EBITDA margins. But I think this year, kind of a sleeper name, and it's not really a sleeper, but Columbia Care is executing at a phenomenal level. And the reason I say they're a bit of a sleeper is that they're trading at a discount to many of the other multi-state operators. Columbia Care is in 18 states. They've got the second largest national footprint in the US, only behind Curaleaf. And they've made 3 major acquisitions in the latter half of last year that have really positioned them for solid growth. They bought the Green Solutions, which was Colorado-based. Then they bought Project Cannabis in California, the largest cannabis market in the world. And then they bought Greenleaf Medical. And Greenleaf Medical is in the Mid-Atlantic and Northeast. And so when you talk about leverage of these new states that are coming online, they operate in several medical-only states that could be flipping over the next 12 to 24 months. So you've got New York, Pennsylvania, Virginia, Ohio, Maryland, and then looking 2 years down, Florida. So we see great leverage to what's going on in the state-by-state trajectory. And we think Curaleaf also, they hit it out of the park in Q4. They just came out, did revenue of $81 million, 51% growth quarter over quarter with commensurate EBITDA strength. So, one of the big differences that we see between the Canadians and the Americans, why we don't support the Canadians as much, is the Canadians aren't generating any free cash flow. And when you compare the top 5 Canadian cannabis companies and the top 5 US cannabis companies, you have a dramatic difference in the profitability. Zero cash flow being generated from the top 5 Canadians in calendar 21, whereas there's close to 1.4, 1.5 billion forecast for the top 5 US companies. So again, fundamentally, we think people are missing the boat here, continuing to focus on the Canadians and not looking at the Americans.
Mm-hmm. Very interesting, Charles. Okay, we're sort of running out of time here, unfortunately, today, but tell me a bit about the performance of your fund in the last year, since you guys seem to be having your thumb right on the pulse of the US MSO scene. How has that benefited your unit holders?
Well, I use the Wayne Gretzky analogy a lot. Doug Watterson and I that co-manage the fund, we try to skate to where the puck is going. And that's really what we've done in continuing to position the fund a little bit differently. So last year, depending on whether you had the A class or the F class, we did somewhere between 37 and 40% total return for the year. And so we're very, very pleased that we were able to maintain the NAV during the weak period in the first 3-4 months of the year, and then really accelerate it out through the balance of the year.
Mm-hmm. Fantastic. Finally, Charles, tell me about the effect of the Canadian, why Canada continues to suffer such a challenging environment in making money. Where I've moved to for the duration of the pandemic is a little corner of rural southern Ontario where there are so many greenhouses that are just tiny startup licensed producers nonetheless, but they're massive in footprint. They're churning out so much cannabis. And I'm watching retail outlets go broke at a fast clip in the general Southern Ontario region. And so, couple that with the headline item I saw that there was 1 billion grams left unsold on the shelves of retailers in Canada as a result of what is obviously an excessive supply relative to demand. Is there some shortfall in the legislative framework in Canada that is preventing Canadian companies from being profitable relative to U.S. ones?
Well, I think there's blame to go around. I mean, look, the federal government legalized cannabis. I think when investors and when founders of these companies went to get licenses, there was no gatekeeping in terms of how many licenses are we going to issue relative to our population. We've got 37 million people, and there's over 300 licensees across the country. Then you had the largest companies really spend too much money. Hundreds of millions of dollars were spent building massive greenhouses, and yet the distribution wasn't able to take that supply. So you've got a supply glut with very expensive greenhouses, which are now being shut down or reduced in cultivation capacity. Over the last year, Canopy reduced over 60% of its cultivation footprint. Aurora closed its Aurora Sun project in Medicine Hat. That's 1.7 million square feet, just shut it down. It's now for sale. And then Aurora Sky in Edmonton is operating at 25%. So we've got a glut of supply, which has also gone into the distillate market, the oil market, to make edibles. So what you've seen is price compression and commoditization. They will get through it, but it's going to take time. And really, I think the final problem in Canada is the lack of marketing that's allowed. The legislation, this is another key area, and I think this is being discussed with regulators, both at Health Canada and within the government, is by eliminating the ability to market products. The only time you can get information is if you go into a store. Otherwise, this industry, you're relying on word of mouth, which can be suspect, but people need to be educated. It's the naive user that's going to grow this market, and it's not all the illicit market. And you want to compete with the illicit market, except they do a pretty good job of avoiding the rules. And you've got a bunch of legal companies that are confined by the rules. And so I think if we take a look at some of the initial legislation that was designed to protect the people, I think we've got to adjust our focus, and that way some of the kinks in the armor get ironed out.
Charles, as usual, a very thoughtful and thought-provoking contribution. Thank you for your time today. We'll come back to you soon.
Thanks very much. Great seeing you. Be well.
So, James Turk, rocking the cannabis stocks. Some good points there.
The proliferation of these outlets
Yeah.
in Toronto,
Yeah.
they're all over the place.
Yeah.
I just found a new one,
Yeah.
government backed.
Yeah.
I walked in.
Yeah.
I was going to go to the cafe.
Yeah. And smoke
Is it
some.
okay? Is it okay to mention names and it's public, right?
Yeah.
So I was going to go to the cafe where I normally go and buy a pre-roll, but I've noticed the pre-rolls sometimes they don't burn very well. Like they're too clumpy. The
Poorly rolled.
poorly rolled. There you go. There's a connoisseur. And I went over to the government shop.
Yeah.
A little more expensive.
Yes.
Nicer packaging.
Yeah.
Nicer premises.
Better rolling job?
Exquisite.
Really?
No, I bought the pre-roll, and I must tell you, it burned straight all the way down.
Perfectly
nice, perfectly rolled.
Nicely rolled.
Government rolled.
Perfectly rolled. The
I don't
government
know.
got.
I don't know.
Wait
Maybe-
a sec. The government's
I'm thinking-
got its own brand of weed now.
Well, it's no, but it's a government sanctioned business as opposed to next door, which
Where-
is the
A black market facility.
Well, no, but they've allowed these cafe things to proliferate, and they're
you
not.
mean the cafe doesn't have a license?
I don't want to say because I don't
Well, you
know.
didn't say the name of the cafe, so no
Well,
zero moral
cafes-
hazard there.
But everybody knows it's there. It's
Well, I don't
says
know what you're
cafe.
talking about.
What I'm saying is,
What's the name of the cafe?
it's called Cafe. That's the name of it.
Jesus, that's a good name for a black market establishment.
And there's, I think, 4 of them in 4 or 5 locations.
so
in
if the
Toronto.
cop's watching, and he's like, "I'm going to
they
go
know,
bust those guys."
They know shit. They
What do you mean they know?
Well,
so
they
they're
have-
allowing stores to sell cannabis without a license, and you're saying that Health Canada knows?
I don't know.
You
What do I
don't know?
I-
Who knows?
I'm not saying anything. I'm saying that the pre-roll at the cafe shop doesn't compare to the quality, the supreme rolling. Somebody knows how to roll.
This is the thing. As Charles was saying, the average EBITDA of the largest 5 Canadian cannabis companies the average EBITDA is 0.
0.
There's no EBITDA in the
No.
top 5 companies predicted for 2021.
None.
The average EBITDA in the U.S. is 3 to 3.5 billion in 2021, and this is why. This is my point that I would like to make to Health Canada is that if you don't enforce the licensing system, the Canadian producers
Right.
are never going to be profitable, and instead of subjecting the investing public to
Right.
potentially bad marijuana, you're allowing them to get bankrupted
Yeah.
by publicly traded Canadian companies who can't compete with the black market because it's so over-regulated on the regulated side
yeah.
and so not regulated on the black market side. So, shitter, get off the pot, man.
I should add though.
Get off the pot, get it? You missed that one, eh?
I'm
hairdo's
I'm not getting off the pot soon. I like it. It's comfortable. Anyway, I will say this about the cafe. The prices are better.
Well, obviously, no
Duh,
taxes,
duh.
no compliance fees.
I don't know what they're doing. I don't know how it works. I don't want to knock the cafe because I'm a customer.
Pretty sure with a name like Cafe that they're not a
And
registered participant.
you can walk in and buy pastries, and if you want to slip into the
Pastries?
back room and buy some marijuana.
A back room. Now we know for sure this is an unlicensed
No,
facility.
it's not. It's
Because
I
all
don't-
of the Canadian licensed companies are trying to push their cannabis out to as close to street level as
Yeah.
possible, but they're not allowed to because of the advertising rules, as Jim Turk said. Charles Turk.
Well,
Jim
this
Turk. Confusing
cafe
him with me now.
this cafe. I mean, you Google cafe and
I'm going to Google Cafe right now in Maps, Google Maps. So Google Maps arguably should come up with
yeah.
something to say.
Oh, for sure. Oh, for sure.
Google.com. We should be able to see some indication. Oh, let's go cafe. Toronto. Let's see what comes up here. Wow. Look at that. A whole bunch of cafes. Oh, here's one called Cafe Dispensary. Is this the one?
That's one of them.
Is it on 66 Fort York Boulevard?
Yes,
Really?
that's the one.
That's the one you go to?
No, that's not the one I go to, but that's
Well, how
the
do you
one
know
I
that's-
used to go to.
They got a website.
Yeah, well, it's on 60s. It's near where they play baseball.
In Toronto?
Yeah, it's very close to there.
Blue Jays Stadium?
Two or three blocks.
Enter cafe. Okay, these guys look like they're licensed.
Well, they may be, except
Look at that bud.
I'll give you an example. For instance, if I bought some flour,
Yeah.
and the flour's pre-packaged, blah blah blah, with a seal on it.
Yeah.
You go to the other place and buy some flour,
Yeah.
and they take the flour out of a jar and they weigh it and put it in a bag, seal it. It's a little different.
Ah.
It's
So which address of these is the one you go to?
well, there's one on St. Clair West.
Ah, 1321 St. Clair Avenue West.
Woo-hoo! Come on in for
Okay.
a free. That's it.
If I was a betting man, I would say that these guys definitely have a license.
I'm not going to bet because I spent all my money on marijuana. I don't have any money. No. 3 easy ways to shop our Toronto dispensaries.
Okay, so you're saying that this is a
Here's what I'm saying. I'm saying Cafe is next to the government store,
right,
and the government store has got virtually nobody in it, and Cafe is full.
right, because cafe is cheaper, but they just don't know how to roll that.
I don't know. And again, that's a small point because if you could just take that pre-roll apart, put it in a pipe and light it up, it burns.
Well, there you go.
Yeah, so there's a way around it.
Huh. You know what?
It's not like you're getting bad booze, right? It's not.
Well, you know what the thing with the pre-rolls, you know how they're always shaped like a baseball bat?
Well, that's what what the hell's with that?
I don't know. I mean, does it burn better that way? Because I always roll it like,
No,
when I was growing up, the
small
pride
end,
was,
yeah, it's a baseball bat.
you knew how to roll it, if you could roll it like a cigarette, straight and true. And that's how they burned the best, and that was everybody's trying to roll
Yeah,
like that.
yeah.
The baseball bat was basically, that's what you would get from somebody who didn't know how to roll.
And they come in a tube.
And it would start on
And
fire
the
on the
tube's
end.
shaped on a baseball bat.
And then it's all cat-assed because all the resin comes down and gets stuck in the narrow little filter. I mean, I don't understand that. If somebody
Yeah.
could tell us why the baseball bat, like, I don't get that. That does.
So there's what I would say is, and only going to a couple different ones, the quality. You can shop around. In other words, it's not all one.
So what's the difference in pricing, though?
Well, because
We know
we're
for a
talking
fact
such
that
small.
Cafe is not an unlicensed dispensary, and having now been to their website,
It's got to be licensed.
gotta be.
Yeah.
Look at that.
Look at that.
Look at that. website.
But it's a little bit different in terms of how they dispense, right? Whereas the government shop, you got the containers that we've seen.
So when you say the government shop, do you mean like the Ontario Cannabis store?
Yeah,
Oh.
I think but it's called something. It has a name.
Oh, it's not the Ontario Cannabis store.
No.
Okay, so tell you what we're going to do, Ed. So let's see what's next door.
Well, it's about three doors to the. It would be a bigger number. It would be about 1340 or 30.
So further to the west?
Further to the west, yes. Right on the corner of that first street.
Okay. Ensalada
That's
Cannabis
it.
market.
That's it.
Okay, well, neither one is a government market.
How do you know?
Well, they're both government markets in that they both have a license to
Well,
sell.
but the thing I bought had a seal on it. Whenever you see that seal,
Oh,
Like-
so it's
like-
just a different selling technique at Cafe. They sell bulk and pre-rolls that are not machine-made, maybe?
I don't. The point is, I'm saying if you're not happy with one, go to another one.
On that note,
well,
let's
we've got a
talk-
marketing gene. No, this guy's a consumer. He won't eat shit. He wants his shit to be special. Okay.
our next guest is the CEO of a private company that's raising Reg A money for a cannabis pharmaceutical deal. My next guest is Jim DeMessa. He's the Chief Executive Officer of Emerald Health Pharmaceuticals. Jim, welcome.
Thank you. Great to be here.
Yeah, great to have you here. Jim, the Emerald Health Pharmaceuticals sort of empire is something that takes a bit of understanding.
Yep.
And I'm wondering if you could just put that all together for us as a way to kick this interview off, and that way and drill down to where you sit in that universe, and then we'll start talking about that.
Sure, I think that's a great place to start because it can get complicated. There is a group. There are a group of Emerald companies, which Emerald Health Pharmaceuticals, the company that I lead, is one of those companies. All of these Emerald companies are partially owned by a private company called Emerald Health Sciences. And so you may have heard, and I think you have heard of Emerald Health Therapeutics, for example. They are a Canadian-based company that is involved in the traditional or somewhat traditional cannabinoid-based technology of growing and extracting cannabinoid molecules like cannabidiol or CBD, all the way to the companies like ours, which are science-based, pharmaceutical and biotechnology-based, which use cannabinoid molecules as a starting point, but then use, as we term it, use the unique convergence of science, biology, and cannabinoids to create completely new molecules that have effects that the basic cannabinoid molecules like CBD don't have, and that could potentially treat diseases. And then there are other companies like ours in the Emerald family of companies that have pharmaceutical-based or nutraceutical-based products, all based on cannabinoids, but different aspects of cannabinoids, if you will.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and so your particular focus is Emerald Health Pharmaceuticals.
Correct.
And what sort of product pipeline do you guys offer?
Well, first of all, we are a private company. So unlike some of the other Emerald companies, which are public, like the one I mentioned, Emerald Health Therapeutics is a public company in Canada. We're a private company in the US. We're based in San Diego. And we have molecules. Our founding scientists they were looking at natural products, not cannabinoids initially, but natural products to try and create biologic effects in the body that could treat some serious diseases that currently have no cure. And they ended up finding that the cannabinoids were the perfect starting material. And so our technology is based on CBD, cannabidiol, and CBG, cannabigerol, that are manipulated scientifically and chemically to affect certain biologic pathways and receptors in the body that are validated for some serious diseases like multiple sclerosis, Parkinson's disease, and other diseases that currently have no cure. So to answer your question, our molecules, which are patented with composition of matter patents, because we are new molecules that are no longer CBD or CBG or the cannabinoid molecules, which can't be patented. But we have patented technology, patented molecules that can affect these biologic receptors and pathways in the body to treat multiple sclerosis with our lead molecule, and another disease called systemic sclerosis, which is a rare called orphan disease for people that know that terminology. And we've been granted orphan drug designation by the FDA and the EMA in Europe. And then, so systemic sclerosis is an autoimmune disease that there's no cure for as well. Our second product candidate is targeting Parkinson's disease, which is 10 million people around the world suffer from Parkinson's disease, and Huntington's disease, another rare disease for which we've been granted orphan drug designation in the US and Europe. So those are our four main targets for diseases, all of which have no cure, and two molecules that are targeting those diseases.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so as a private company, I understand you're raising capital through Regulation A+, right, and that you are just a week away from closing that Regulation A offering. Is that because you have raised the maximum amount of $67.1 million?
Not quite. We're getting close. We've raised almost that amount, but the main reason that we have to terminate this, and it's March 28th is the deadline, is because by SEC rules, you have a certain period of time before you have to reapply for another Regulation A offering. So we're not sure whether we will apply, because we have raised a significant amount of money as kind of a pre-IPO opportunity for individual investors. But right now we have to close this on March 28th. So like you say, it's just a few days away. And we've been very successful so far because we're at the perfect time for a biotechnology company like ours to not only be able to show efficacy in those terrible diseases that I mentioned, but also to create significant value for shareholders, because phase 2 human clinical trials is where the value of these companies like ours can go up significantly. And we are now in phase 2 human clinical trials. So perfect timing for investors.
Right. So that gives us, since we'll be publishing at the end of the day on March 26th, does that mean that the viewers will have this weekend to sign up for the Reg A, and that's it? It closes Sunday night at midnight?
That's correct. Now, just to be clear, though, that means somebody has to have a commitment to invest by that time, by midnight on Sunday night. They don't have to fund the investment at that moment. It can take several weeks to fund the investment and even decide they change their mind. But we do have to have a commitment by SEC regulations by Sunday night at midnight, the 28th.
Okay, well that's good to know. Oftentimes, the complaint from our viewers is that the Reg A Plus opportunity has closed by the time we bring it to their attention. At least this time, we've got 2 days before it closes for them. So
Hey,
great.
yeah,
Okay, so
one other
now,
thing. Sorry, one other thing.
Yeah.
I just want to make sure it's clear, because I know you're in Canada. Unfortunately, because of Canadian regulations, it's not open to Canadian investors. So it's open to the rest of the world, but not Canadian investors, unfortunately.
Well, rest assured, the larger portion of our subscriber base is U.S. based, so still the opportunity is there. Good for you. Let me ask you, what are you going to use all those funds for?
Well, right now, as I mentioned, we're in phase 2 human clinical trials. And as many people know, those are expensive and complicated efforts. And so most of the funding that we're doing right now is to continue to advance our programs, the 2 that I've mentioned, into completing phase 2 and going into phase 3 human clinical trials, and then ultimately towards commercialization, approval and commercialization for those molecules.
Okay, fantastic. And then so your plan is to actually do an IPO onto the NASDAQ exchange or one of the US exchanges?
Well, we're definitely setting our company up for an IPO. With the Regulation A rules by the SEC, we can't comment on when or if we'll do that. But certainly one of the areas of advice that we've gotten, if we're going to do a public offering, is once we start getting phase 2 data. So that is our plan as we start to advance this program into phase 2 and beyond, is to create liquidity for our investors by doing some kind of a public offering or some kind of partnership deal with a large pharma company or whatever can create liquidity for our investors.
In as lay terms as is possible, can you describe what the similar, like to what extent is your molecule differentiated from its source cannabinoid relative? And could you also perhaps briefly describe how it works to mitigate the effects of systemic sclerosis and muscular sclerosis?
Yeah, sure. I mean, that's the fundamental excitement that we have. As I mentioned, starting with CBD, for example, if I had multiple sclerosis, I would probably take CBD because there are known health benefits, anti-inflammatory benefits. It could probably help some of my symptoms, but it's not going to change the course or progression of this terrible disease of MS. The next step, for example, you may have heard of a company called GW Pharma, where they're treating some forms of epilepsy, rare forms of childhood epilepsy with CBD, high doses of CBD, and they're treating the symptoms. But again, it's not going to change the course of that disease, just like MS. Our molecules, because they have been changed very specifically, they actually affect receptors and pathways in the body that are specific for treating diseases like multiple sclerosis and systemic sclerosis and Parkinson's disease and so forth. And so if I were to take that molecule, it actually not only in our studies to date shows that it stops the progression of the disease, so the disease gets no worse, but it also reverses the course of the disease and potentially, ideally, even cure the disease if we can prove that in clinical trials.
Mm-hmm. Fantastic. All right. So what is the expectation in terms of the timing of from where you are now to getting to a potential? I guess it's an EUA from the FDA as a result of successful phase 3 trials.
Yeah, that would be an NDA, a new drug application, and we're still several years away from that. But again, for investors, it's important to know. I mentioned GW Pharma, for example. When way back in 2013, when they were at the stage of development where we are, they were a company, public company at the time, and their valuation was in the few $100 million range, kind of where we are. And then they got phase 2 results. They're still 8 years away from commercialization, an NDA, as you mentioned, but their market value went from a couple $200 million to over $2 billion in less than 6 months. So a very significant increase long before they got NDA approval. They just got NDA approval in the last couple of years, and now they've been bought out by a pharmaceutical company for $7.2 billion. So again, that's the kind of value creation that can occur, especially at phase 2, which is where we are right now.
Wow, fantastic. Jim, I want to thank you for your time today. We're going to follow the story with interest. Congratulations on your Reg A Plus offering, and I look forward to speaking to you again soon. Thanks for your time.
Very much. It was great to talk to you.
You bet. Bye for now. So if you want to learn more about the Emerald Health Pharmaceuticals offering, it closes this Sunday night at midnight. It's only open to U.S. investors, and you can find out how to invest at Emerald Pharmaceuticals website. Just Google it, and you can find out more about the company's offering on the SEC website. Just look up under company filings, Emerald Health Pharmaceuticals.
Where are they based out of?
Vancouver.
And only available to the States? A Vancouver company, and they're selling only to the States?
Yeah. No, actually, sorry, he's somewhere down in West Coast.
Yeah, he's got to be in.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, that was wrong. That was wrong.
Well, there
misinformation.
Hey,
fake news.
We found out right away, though.
Fake news.
Chop it.
Kill it. So talking about moral hazard again here. What about the announcement that the Canada Revenue Agency is going to force CoinDesk to reveal the names of all of its account holders?
Yeah, and the.
But wait a sec. Wasn't one of the value propositions of cryptocurrencies, or Bitcoin in particular, that it would protect your anonymity? So here we have another element of fraudulent representation in the Bitcoin universe, which, again, I'm going to say it once, say it again, say it with me 3 times. Bitcoin is the largest fraud ever in the history that remains unprosecuted. I'm going to die with those words on my lips. Say it again.
When Bitcoin starts taking on water, and it got very close to going under 50,000 in the last 24 or 36 hours.
Yeah.
It's all about the price. If the price stays up here, we're laughing. We're
laughing.
Yeah, we're fun. It's fun. Soon this becomes this. If the stock starts to sink.
Stock.
And I think,
money.
the stock, but...
is it money? Or is it a stock?
Bitcoin.
Or is it money?
It's Bitcoin.
Is it money? What can you buy with
we
Bitcoin?
can call it anything else.
You think you can buy a Tesla with a Bitcoin?
Yes, you can. Apparently...
What? Talk about moral hazard.
Elon announced this week, in the United States, we'll take your Bitcoin to buy... So how would we do it? Bitcoin, let's say the Tesla's worth 49,000, the Bitcoin's 51. What do? How do they... snip it off
well, show me a Bitcoin. You got a Bitcoin on you? I don't see any Bitcoin.
I guess they must deal out tenths of Bitcoins and hundreds of Bitcoins.
Fractional Bitcoin ownership is now possible through certain fund.
Do you know in the last short while, Ethereum has outperformed Bitcoin? I read that.
Ethereum is a legitimate
blockchain
thing. It's a blockchain. It's an active. Think of it as a virtual contract hosted in the cloud. Certain conditions trigger payment. It doesn't need to be the unit of payment in and of itself. Ethereum is basically a contract that is witnessed by all of the other Ethereum nodes, much like Bitcoin is a monetary unit whose entire ledger of transactions is mutually witnessed by all of the other Bitcoin nodes. But the difference between Ethereum and Bitcoin is that Bitcoin has no value except as a unit of proposed monetary conveyance.
Yeah, it's been said over and over again, the only way you make money on Bitcoin is if you buy it and sell it higher. That's it.
Right.
There's no other way out of this.
So it's not
So
a
when it
monetary-
rolls over, and you got to watch your charts, and you start to see this thing taking on water, if it breaks, I think there's some numbers out there.
Well, what would happen to Tesla? Let's say they sell
What?
$2 billion
I know.
worth of
Is this
Teslas
the-
and take it in Bitcoin, and Bitcoin goes from 50 grand to 25 grand. What does that do to Tesla's book value or even sales in that quarter?
You're asking. Look,
Like, that's just insanity.
I don't know. I think it's insane that. I don't know.
I think it's pretty insane that you don't know, too.
Well, what's insane is that Bitcoin has got a $1 trillion valuation now, bigger than Tesla.
Think there's any moral hazard
Well,
there?
there's moral hazard. It's everywhere. It's here. It's there. It's everywhere.
It's everywhere. It's everywhere. It's everywhere. Speaking of moral hazard, the U.S. 10-year rate is still bucking $1.66 here, 166.4 basis points. And despite the fact that, it doesn't seem to be feeling any...
It just may move to the right here without backing off.
Yes.
And then until the next round of so-called implied
Stimulus?
inflation. Well, no, but look at these commodities. Copper's,
Quantitative easing. Counterfeiting.
You can't print metals. That's one thing you can't do. And I think when this is all said and done and everything sort of runs its course, fiat money, Bitcoin, all this shit, they're going to say, you know what? Maybe we're going to have to go back to gold.
Well,
Last man. That's how it.
I think they're going to collaborate. The G7 banks are going to collaborate on a debt jubilee that will coincide with the release of digital central bank currencies, which will see Bitcoin have its right to exist removed by the collaborative effort of said governments because it's not money, it's a fraud, and they're going to use the extreme financial pain caused by the collapse of Bitcoin to legitimize their mandate in their public disclosure about why the digital central bank currency is to be trusted while the non-central bank-backed digital currency, also known as Bitcoin, all of its flavors and all of the other cryptocurrencies are not to be trusted. That's what I think the game is personally. That's just me. I see boogeymen everywhere.
Didn't India just say that India's
No Bitcoin.
Yeah.
There
And
will be no Bitcoin.
aren't there like a lot of these math geniuses come from India, right?
You're a math genius.
Well, thank you. We'll leave it at that's it. We don't need to know anything else. The show's over. We'll leave it at there. I'm a math genius.
All right.
Okay.
Talking about the cannabis space, so a little bit again here. Remember that AFRIA was taking over Tilray, and that caused AFRIA's share price to spike up back here in February to over $60, and now it's back down here at $21.22.
Yeah.
Mind you, the whole cannabis sector is rather beat up. I think in large part because Joe Biden fired 5 White House staffers for past cannabis use. And doesn't that strike you as extremely contradictory to their sort of pro-cannabis stance during the campaign utterances before getting elected?
Yeah, maybe there's something going on there that we don't know. Maybe Biden put in an order from some cannabis and got some real shit stuff, and he said, "Oh yeah, you guys."
Or Biden's investing in Canadian cannabis companies and tries to poo-poo the American ones so the Canadian ones go up.
And didn't Cuomo just announce that New York is legalizing? Like, there's so much going on. That's federal. That's provincial.
Serial
That's
sexual predator.
Well, like he's slap happy.
Slap.
How you doing?
Slap.
I
happy,
don't know.
right.
I don't.
Anyways, so Curaleaf is 1477 today. We're talking U.S. figures here. CJ on our
That's done well though.
YouTube
That's been
channel
one of the
gave
best.
us a royal shellacking
Yeah.
for saying that. What the hell? I thought this was a Canadian channel. Why are you guys showing all these charts in U.S. dollars? I want to. And it's like, CJ, relax, sit down, smoke a joint. But the bigger audience for our show is U.S. based, and so we like to show U.S. charts.
Yeah.
It's easy for Canadians to figure out what a Canadian stock price is for U.S. dollars. It's a lot tougher for Americans to figure out what the convergence is in Canadian dollars to U.S. dollars. So, like, just glory in your Canadian mental superiority and don't make a fuss. Anyways, so like all these companies are down huge from where they were.
Yeah.
Look at Grow Generation. This is a company that makes picks and shovels more or less in the cannabis space, down from a high of $64 back here in February. Now sucking hind tit here at $42.41. Tilray, wow, look at that big drop down from $60 to $21. The parent company, now this is a company I invested in out of a SPAC, and this sort of leads into my next conversation about the U.S. SEC is cracking down on SPACs.
They got a lot to crack down on, don't they?
They got a lot of crack going on.
You know what? We should probably get a good job with the SEC.
They could probably give us some crack to smack. Smack and crack. Now, those are two bad things that we don't want any moral hazard
No smack,
to deal with.
no crack.
So the parent company is Jay-Z's Cannabis deal. I've been going on about this, I know, but so
What's
this
it at?
was it's at $7.32. This was $7.32 USD. This is a SPAC that was put together by Michael Auerbach from Tilray's board of directors and was raised $570 million, merged with the parent company, which is Jay-Z's weed deal, and the company has now lost 30% of its value since the merger. And this is what got the SEC all hot under the collar, is that I think it's something like 90% of the SPACs that have gone public since sorry, let me rephrase that. Let me restate that, not in the context of a financial statement, but in the context of, let's go to the news, who knows. A substantial number of the SPACs that have gone public in March have lost money from their IPO price. In fact, there was only one or two that actually increased in value. So there's an increasing proliferation of SPACs. That's what the SEC is concerned about, is they think that the financial industry is exploiting the public's excitement around SPACs, and now the SPACs are starting to lose money. So this is supposedly now the SEC is going to
moral hazard.
Moral hazard. But then what's the front?
Wait, you don't have to say
more
moral hazard. You just say moral hazard. Moral hazard.
Right. And then we have, what's the news today? Front page of the Wall Street Journal. WeWork plans to go public in a $9 billion SPAC merger. Is this not
moral hazard?
SoftBank getting their position off into the public float? Like this is the moral hazard that I think the SEC wants. SEC, hello, woohoo, over here. WeWork going public
Don't
in
look
a
at
$9
us.
billion.
Look over here.
Not us. It's not us this time. But I would take a close look at that WeWork SPAC, because I'm pretty sure that's Masayoshi Son, the CEO, getting out of his obligation, his holdings in WeWork through a SPAC. Anyways, and that's really what SPACs end up doing, is monetizing a capital pool and giving the investors in the SPAC an exit into the market at the IPO price, and then the retail public comes in, the shorts come in, knowing that the originator of the SPAC is going to be getting off its paper. I wonder what the hold policy is on investors in SPACs. What's the period that they have to hold onto their paper before they can start selling? I bet you it's not very long, if at all.
You know, you wonder if someone's going to come out with something and then call it spam, because they got SPAC, and you change the C to an M, and then you got spam.
Is that what happens when you mix a SPAC with crack and bacon?
Speaking.
Speaking of spanking. Spanking, woo! See, you're already slapping yourself.
Okay,
there.
I'm slapping myself silly here.
Got to watch ourselves.
Yeah,
here,
well,
right? This is G-rated, remember?
Yeah.
G-rated.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
So
Interesting.
Yeah.
There's always something, isn't there? Every cycle where it gets frothy, there's always some new
Every psycho. Cycle.
the cycle of psychos.
The psychosomatic.
Psychosomatic.
Anyways, the herd mentality.
What about herd immunity? Herd immunity.
That's rife with moral hazard.
Is that bullshit? That herd immunity?
Boy, we're not confounding issues here today, are we? SPAC, crack, herd immunity, moral hazard. Boy, oh boy, this is a weighty show suddenly. Anyways, what do you make about the ship that's blocking the ships?
Did you read about how this could have happened?
What could have happened?
That it's this way, and the canal goes this way, and they say it winds, strong winds.
Well, I know why it happened.
But
because somebody wanted to ship their ship in the ship. And the ship was too big for the canal, and it got windy, and it blew it sideways. But did you want to ship anything?
No.
You don't want to ship your pants? How would you like to ship the bed, Ed?
You know, can I ship my pants?
You are free to ship your pants,
You know
but you can't
all
use
those
the Suez
commercials
Canal.
got taken off because they offended too many people.
Really?
Yeah, you know, 'cause
Oh,
the grandma
that doesn't
came out,
bode well for
can
us.
I ship my pants?
Ooh, I wonder if we could use our lose our YouTube status for talking about shipping your pants. Though you can't ship your pants through the Suez Canal right now. You know why?
It's blocked.
By
It's blocked by Evergreen.
a ship.
A
Some ship shipped the canal.
And it looks like it's going to take a long time. But this has put a lot of strain on world trade, hasn't
Well,
it?
let's take a look at the price of oil. Good point. Do we have the price of oil up here? No, we don't have the price of oil ready. What's wrong with this? CFDs
I think
on
it's
gold,
I'd say
CFDs on silver.
61 bucks for the
61 bucks, eh? You know what?
West
I'm gonna
Texas.
pull it up
Of
right
course, we
here.
should be looking at probably,
Oil.
you know,
WTIC futures, let's go. Crude oil futures, MCX. No, let's stay away from that. NYMEX mini oil futures, WTI. Nope, not the mad about. Crude oil futures, here we go. NYMEX. Now we're talking legitimacy. Front month, $60.85. So zooming in on the price, how long has it been? I'm going to go to the full screen on that. And how long has it been that why is that so dark? I don't know. But so the price of oil has come off since the boat got stuck in the canal. And why is that? You would think that all that oil jammed up in the canal.
You know what? Oil was at 66 bucks a week ago.
A week ago.
Or 8 days ago.
8 days ago.
And everyone's talking about a new bull market in oil.
A new bull market.
And lumber was going through the roof.
Lumber's gone through the roof.
Yeah, and soybeans are in beans in the teens. Beans in the teens.
Beans.
$14 plus.
Beans,
and
beans.
copper's $4. Copper, I think, is 407 today. I want to say that.
Why is copper selling off?
Well, it's sold out because it went from 2 and change to 4 and change, which is a double.
Foreign change like the peso?
Like
is a
foreign
unit?
exchange. Foreign
Okay,
change.
so-
foreign change.
But wait a sec
I
here.
got some foreign change.
This is a commodity price we're talking.
Right.
So it's not like a stock price where the technicals governing
no,
supply
no,
and
but
demand.
there's always there's a little bit of that. I think there's been some
Well,
talk between the Americans.
So did you go out and buy some copper when the price of copper started going up?
I started melting some pennies.
You did.
I'm a bit of a penny. Of course, they have to be pre-certain date, right?
Because after that, no copper.
No, a little bit.
Really? So is a
Bronze.
copper worth more than a penny? Is a penny worth more than a cent if it's got copper in it today?
Oh yeah. Oh no, it's like a nickel.
Oh yeah. Oh no.
If you got old pennies, they're worth way more.
Really?
Just like the real dimes
How old?
and quarters.
Oh, because they actually had silver in it.
That's why. Yeah, you got a bag of coins. It's worth a lot more. It's by weight.
No kidding.
Yeah, they take all those silver coins and they weigh them and
How
say,
much nickel is in a nickel? More than 5 cents?
five.
Worth?
Yes.
Is that because the price of nickel's gone up?
I know. They may have changed, but
So shouldn't the purchasing power of a nickel then be a dime?
have you ever seen a nickel lately? You haven't even seen a nickel.
I've seen a nickel
I
bag.
don't have a nickel to my name.
Do you know what a nickel bag is?
I know what a nickel bag.
Yeah.
$5 for the pot. You know what much that is? Nothing.
No, you know how much $5 is a pot
You know
is?
what that is? That's someone pulls like this and blows the smoke on you, and they say, "Give me $5."
See, even the price of pot is being inflated. So the price of pot is a good example of so a nickel bag used to be 1/8 of an ounce was a nickel bag.
Was that 1/8 of an ounce?
That was 1/8. No, sorry. A nickel bag used to be
Nickel bag is $5, right?
an ounce of pot used to be $20 when I first started smoking weed when I was like 13.
And then it could be 25, 35, 40.
$20 and a dime bag was half an ounce and a nickel bag was 1/4 of an ounce
Yeah.
back in the day. Back in the day when cannabis came loaded with seeds.
Back early in the day.
Have you smoked any Delta 8? You might have. You wouldn't know, would you?
I wouldn't know.
No. So Delta 8 is this new, it's not new, it's been there all the time, but it's a cannabinoid that occurs in low dosages. Delta 8 tetrahydrocannabinol is not as psychoactive as delta 9 tetrahydrocannabinol, which is the psychoactive ingredient that
What should I
causes
go
the
for?
high.
The Delta 8 or Delta 9?
Well, this is the thing. It's a matter of preference.
Yeah.
So those who like CBD heavy sort of
A.
smokes go for B. And
B?
A.
A. 8 or
A.
B?
No, A. A being tetrahydrocannabinol delta 9. B being tetrahydrocannabinol delta 8. Not
Okay.
A, but 8. Anyways, so it's something we got to try. We're going to try it on our next show. We're running out of time here today. So that's our show for today. Thank you very much for joining us. We'll see you next week. Have a great weekend.